Story 1. The pandemic wasn't kind to me or my future husband. His company folded right before COVID took off, and then my company, which was planning to close at the end of the year, decided to go ahead and pull the plug right before that magical unemployment bonus took effect, so neither of us got more than the base amount. Last summer, before the eviction moratorium took effect in our state, we made the decision to let our apartment go, to avoid having an eviction on our record, and move in with his parents. He was able to find work through the union, but it has been slow going. Last fall, I got a job that allowed me to work from home, but it was through a temp agency and in a field I knew nothing about. During this time, he has been working his backside off to get moved to higher paying work, and I have been working, learning this job, and taking on extra assignments with the hope of getting offered a permanent position with the company. We pay rent and contribute towards utilities. We also buy our own food, own bathroom and cleaning supplies, etc., while we have slowly gotten back on our and are waiting for the moratorium to be lifted so we can finally move out again. Rentals are almost non-existent in our city right now. His mom and stepfather have a lovely home. His stepfather has an excellent job and earns more than enough money, so his mother doesn't and has never worked. Unfortunately, his mom is a master manipulator. She is constantly trying to guilt us into doing something by making up elaborate stories. Like this past weekend, he went to work for some overtime, and I decided to sleep in until 8. My phone was blown up for an hour with some back and forth story from his mom about how she needed help canning some fruit and couldn't ask her friend over to help because the bathroom was too embarrassing. I clean the hall bathroom every Saturday. When I didn't answer because I was asleep, the messages got more and more frantic, and eventually, I have to clean this bathroom because I need help with these pears and I'm going to charge you $200. This is her way of saying, I need help canning some fruit this weekend. Would you mind helping? She just can't come right out and say it. She makes up a sob story to get someone to volunteer instead or to get money. She does this for everything but particularly for money. She'll come pound on the door with both fists as hard as she can, screaming at the tops of her lungs at 4 a.m. After we've sufficiently had a heart attack and leapt from the bed thinking the house was on fire, it's her crying about how she needs $40 for her phone bill. Her husband pays that. Why is she asking us? She barges into the bathroom and whines that the water bill is due and it costs so much money. Again, her husband pays the bills. If they were short, he could always just ask us for a little extra. Every time we turn around, she is asking us for money. We don't know if she is secretly gambling or what, but every time I hear her on the phone, she is giving some sob story to the person on the other end about needing money. Every time we see her, she is always either asking for money or bringing up how much something costs. Mind you, we are both paying rent, utilities, groceries, etc. We aren't living there for free. Even still, it's not like she and her husband are destitute. I just think she's spending money like crazy and trying to keep him from finding out. Well, recently, I just found out that the company I have been working for is taking me on permanently. This comes with a significant pay raise plus a signing bonus, which will just about pad the rest we need for the deposit on a house once one comes available. I told my future husband to keep his mouth shut. Don't tell her about the position change, and certainly not about the raise. Got up this morning, and she was laying on the money talk thick. Turns out, she went into my phone while I was in the shower, saw a text I sent to my own mother about the salary increase, which does not take effect for another month, and demanded I pay her the entire difference because now I could afford it. But asked that I don't tell her husband, or he will throw us out because now we can afford to live on our own. Now it makes sense that her begging for money always seems to correlate with me or my future husband working overtime or getting extra money somewhere. She's been going through our phones and mail. I don't know what to do. We don't have any friends or relatives that have room for us to move to temporarily, and until the moratorium is lifted, the current wait list for any apartment is over a year. Story 2. My own extended family found out that I have money as well. I don't have a lot of aunts and uncles left, Plenty of cousins, though his dad had 6 sisters who all had children. Only 4 cousins are younger than I am. I haven't spoken to them in like 20 years, and the only times I have spoken with them was at a funeral of one of the aunts and uncles. I have no relationship with them. I received several messages of cousins who heard through a lot of people that I had money. When I read this, I was mentally preparing for yet another storm. Yep, they were angry. They wanted to know why I didn't tell anyone. One of them ranted and raved about how unfair everything was, and I could have let them know and yada yada yada. When she finally was done, I asked, perhaps rather rudely, if she was done, and if I could explain. I made one group, and I wrote the whole story of what was happening in that group. I ended with the words, in bold, underlined in huge letters, "This is why I never told you." Several were shocked that what happened did happen. I asked them why they were mad that I never told them. No one really answered that until I said that maybe because they wanted to benefit from it. Some no way, and how can you think that of us? I answered that the reason I think is because of all the stuff that has hit my fan. I have lost a lot of trust in people in general because of this. To make a long story short, a couple of them asked if they could get, not borrow, some money. Others said they would like to borrow some if possible. I uploaded a document that CLC, Certified Loan Cousin, and I had signed. I told them that what was stated in the document were the rules. They could read it or not. One cousin asked if I could give him a call. I did. Turns out his daughter has a severe illness. Without treatment, she'll likely die. I won't name it for anonymity's sake. There is a treatment in the US that could help her. Chances remain slim, but if it is a success, his daughter might live and live a somewhat good quality of life. Unfortunately, that treatment is not paid for by the insurance company. I didn't trust it after so many stories and asked for details. He asked if I could come and visit. His daughter was in the hospital. He didn't lie one bit. God, that girl. She's in her early 20s, but still. Tubes and monitors everywhere. Books on bed as she tried to do some homework. I could almost see death standing at her shoulder, waiting. She was so. We had a talk, and eventually her attending doctor came in and explained a bit. Later I went with the doctor to his office, and he explained the rest. I went home afterwards. We verified the doctor's name, field, etc. Cousin and I talked again on the phone. I told him I hadn't made a decision yet and wanted to know if they wanted the money for medical costs only. He confirmed that. His wife/mother of said daughter would go to the US, and they had money to cover her expenses. It would be tight, but they wanted only the money for the medical costs. Hubby and I talked, and we agreed. We agreed to help, but again with strict rules. We would only pay the amount that we were given. The US hospital gave them a number. We would pay the hospital directly and other important details. Only thing we asked in return is that in the event of success and failure, they would put a certain amount of money towards research, in installments if necessary. A lawyer friend drew up the contract and asked another lawyer to review it. This lawyer is specialized in the medical field. I called my cousin again. I told him that I had thoroughly examined the entire situation. I had been played and lied to. I was attacked in many ways, and I had lost my trust in people. I thanked him for his honesty in the situation and commented how hard it must be. I then asked him if his wife was listening. She wasn't, but he put her on speakerphone. I then told them this news. The only thing I heard were tears, cries, and thank yous. I told them that I had strict rules and sent them the draft of the document. I asked them to ask a lawyer or maybe the hospital lawyer to review it. If they agreed, we could sign the document. Later their daughter called me. Same story as her parents. I just hope that this time round the money will do good. Her doctor contacted me, and we are going to arrange the financial details once the contract has been signed between my cousin and I. Other family members of mine have done the greedy grab hands. No was the simple answer, alongside the number of the investment advisor. Told them good luck and blocked the beggars. I don't worry as much as them finding out where I live. My parents, brother and his wife/my sister-in-law can win a tight-lip contest with an oyster. Story 3. So I was heading to a toy store, name redacted for privacy's sake, because they had informed me that they had the new Silophysis model made by Safari Limited. I didn't have that model in my collection, and I usually order my models there, and I have a good enough relationship with the store workers to let me know when a certain model on my list is available. Or sometimes I prepay them to have a certain item in stock, and they have always provided. So I went into the store, wearing a red shirt because I felt like it, and normally the toy store workers wear red, but they have tags on, so you know where this is going. So I enter the store and ask if they have the Silophysis, and they point me in the right direction, since in this case it wasn't one of the models I prepaid them for. So I see the Silophysis among other models. It wasn't the only one, and I get my hands on it. When I take it off the shelf, a lady says to me, "Oh, thank you, I can take it from here." I turn around and see this lady that looks like she is in her late 30s holding out her hand to me, expecting me to just plop the dinosaur in her hands. I was looking confused for a moment, and then she got frustrated and asked me if I was hard of hearing. I asked why she wanted me to hand over the model I wanted, and she asked what I meant. I was an employee. I suddenly got her assumption and told her that no, I don't work here, I was just a customer. She fumed and pointed out that I was wearing the same shade of red as the workers. I responded that red is not exclusive to this store, and if she would excuse me, I was going to purchase the Silophysis. She then got intrusive and started asking why an adult would collect dinosaur models. I responded that people are allowed to have hobbies and tried to move on. Apparently not satisfied with my answer, she blocked me and snatched the Silophysis out of my hands and went to the counter. I was about to shrug my shoulders and grab the spares, not wanting to escalate until I realized that she had also taken the other Silophysis models on the shelf. The other remaining models were of Brachiosaurus and Microraptor, by the way. A little bit infuriated at this, but keeping my calm, I went to the counter and asked her to give it back, and told the people at the counter that she had snatched the model out of my hands. They asked her if it was true, and she actually told the truth, but only because I was being a bad employee, lying about wanting the model for myself and not providing good customer service. Now the counter workers, who had seen me enough times as a consistent buyer, pointed out to the lady that I wasn't a worker, and she got huffy. She then said that she was the proper purchaser, because she was getting them for her kid, while an adult shouldn't be playing with toys, that maybe if I wasn't collecting them I would properly become an adult. So one of the counter workers called the store owner, who came to ask what was going on. After explaining, he had a frown on his face and went to check the security footage. After seeing that she had snatched it out of my hands and had escalated the situation, he ordered her to give me my Safari model, or he would have her ousted from the store. Now the store owner is a big guy, so she withered under his gaze a bit and gave me my Safari. I calmly thanked her. I really didn't want to have to deal with her any further, and the store people, but I will admit, I did enjoy seeing her crumple at the sight of a very annoyed burly guy, and now I have a Silophysis in my collection. Story 4. These events happened a few years ago, so it should be alright to talk about it now. Backstory. I am 30, male, and this occurred with a previous side job I had from 2014 to 2017. I graduated from my local university with a bachelor's degree in history and got a part-time job as a tour guide at my local marine-based museum. It was part of an overnight encampment program where groups of people, usually the Boy Scouts, stay on board a pair of WW2-era warships during the night. Our main job is to teach them what life was like during WW2 and answer questions to those interested. Important for later. The tour guides and front desk manager together organize the order of tours and assign areas where the groups stay on the two boats after the tours are finished. The time of the program usually runs from 5:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. and runs smoothly with a good crew. After the groups are settled for the night, the gift shop closes around 10, and the tour guides and manager leave at 11 when we punch out. This is around the time the night watchman of the building arrived for the night. The story. This all took place in January 2016 in the span of 2 weeks. Our museum is open year-round. I was 24 at the time. I had been about 15 months into this amazing job and had gotten down a set pattern of organization into the overnight program with my coworkers. For whatever reason of which I cannot remember, the position for the front desk manager was vacant at the time. This is where Captain Karen came into her brief stay at the museum. She was a lady roughly in her mid-40s with a brown pompadour hairstyle. She seemed to fit right in at first, and even came up with an organized diagram on both boats for the sleeping arrangements. However, that was her only positive contribution. On her second night, and her first night managing alone, her control freak shenanigans started. She brought an old-looking service bell for the counter that leads to the museum gift shop. She plopped it down on the counter and loudly proclaimed, "This bell will bring personality to my counter," which I thought strange considering the numerous WW2 exhibits on both floors of the museum and the large ship's bell in a case near the front door. I also thought she was joking around, but by 9:15 p.m. that same night, I realized she would be nothing but trouble. The gift shop was already closed and her car was gone. The tour guides could not get to the back area where we signed out until the night watchman arrived at 11. In addition, we heard complaints of her shooting our guests out of the gift shop early and locking well before her sign-out time that same night. The shenanigans continued for the next week and a half, and here are the examples I remember. These are too stupidly specific to be false. Constantly closed the gift shop early, shooing guests out. Would always try to predetermine where groups would stay on both boats without the tour guide's input, even splitting larger groups in separate areas. Once brought Subway sandwiches for the tour guides, but only would give them if they followed her sole organization of the night. We didn't eat them. Constantly made annoyed tones with guests asking multiple questions. Eventually, it got so bad that Captain Karen was called to the museum director's office 2 weeks after she was hired. Within minutes of arriving, the meeting turned into a heated argument which eventually ended in her immediate termination by her throwing a stapler at the museum director. Afterwards, all the tour guides, myself included, got text messages from Captain Karen, completely blaming us for her being fired and her unacceptable behavior while painting herself as the victim. We all decided to block her number, and I never heard from Captain Karen again. I stayed at the museum for another year after the incident, and I left on good terms with the staff as my parents' business got too busy and needed me full-time. Now in 2021, my parents are retired, and I am planning on going back to the museum in the near future. Story 5. For years, my sister believed she could make a living by breeding pugs. She had a breeding pair that she ironically named after sibling characters. The first time the female got pregnant, I had to assist with a birth. She ended up having 10 puppies. For months, we dealt with a smelly puppy pen, and my nephews and I had to take care of them whenever my sister wasn't home. Eventually, she found homes for all but one of the puppies. She refused to sell the last one because, in her words, he was too cute. I knew it. From the beginning, I suspected she would want to keep one of the puppies for herself. She denied it at first, but then she did exactly that. To make it seem like she wasn't keeping the puppy for selfish reasons, she claimed she was giving him to her sons as their dog. But we all knew that wasn't true. That third pug became a complete menace, and with all 3 pugs together, they turned into a chaotic trio. They had so many accidents on the floor that they rusted out the vents. My nephews didn't take care of the third pug as my sister had claimed they would. She frequently threatened to give him away, but never followed through. Anytime someone called her out on it, she would get upset and insist, "He's too cute." After about 2 years of dealing with the chaos, she finally had enough and gave him away. Unlike the previous puppies, she couldn't sell him since he was fully grown and neutered. Fortunately, the mother pug didn't have another litter before my sister was evicted from the family property, which, to be honest, was a relief. I ended up taking care of the pugs just as much as my nephews did whenever my sister wasn't home. The father pug wasn't so bad, but the mother pug was a nightmare. She developed a bizarre habit of exclusively using my sister's bed as her personal bathroom. One time, my sister came home to find And I kid you not, 9 separate messes left by that one dog on her bed. I would see the dog run into the bedroom after coming inside, jump onto the bed, look me straight in the eye like she didn't care what I thought, and then leave a mess wherever she wanted. Most of the time, this happened the moment you took your eyes off her. She was punished for it many times, but she refused to stop. Eventually, we had to keep her caged and keep the bedroom door permanently closed. Even then, if she was let out of the cage, she somehow found her way back in. One day, I decided I wasn't going to take any nonsense from this dog anymore. I refused to let her back inside until she went to the bathroom outside. She did not like that at all. It was cold, the ground was wet, and she wasn't happy. I watched her sniff around and act like she was about to go, only to stop and whine before moving somewhere else. She repeated this routine a few times. Then, suddenly, she looked toward my sister's trailer and ran toward it with what I can only describe as a look of pure joy, as if she was thinking, "That's where I want to go." I stopped her and made her come back. She gave me the most dramatic look of disappointment and just sat there, pouting. I told her I had all day, so she eventually got bored enough to start sniffing around again. She attempted to run to the trailer 2 more times. Finally, after 45 minutes, she couldn't hold it anymore and went outside. But I could tell she wasn't done, so I waited longer. Eventually, she went again because I still wasn't taking her back inside. The walk back was like a walk of shame for her. She knew she had lost. She didn't even put up a fight when I put her back in her cage. I kept up that routine until she finally stopped trying to use the bed. At some point, my sister's boyfriend at the time brought home a puppy that he got for free. The puppy was adorable, but grew into an enormous, uncontrollable monster bigger than my Akbash dog. He was massive and had constant accidents inside the house, especially near my middle nephew's bed. When we tethered him outside, he barked endlessly. On days when I had migraines, this dog made my life miserable. He also made it nearly impossible for anyone to sleep, especially my father. He was so strong that he broke his chain tether multiple times. Rope didn't work because he would chew through it. He chewed everything in sight. My sister had been living in a fifth-wheel trailer on our property at the time, and she had bought it brand new. That dog absolutely destroyed it worse than the pugs ever did. He also ruined plenty of my nephew's belongings. Clothes, shoes, toys. If he could get it in his mouth, he would destroy it. At one point, I had to fix my middle nephew's shelves with duct tape. We told my sister many times that she had to rehome the dog. We even gave her ultimatums, but she still refused. Eventually, she sold the dog to someone who already had one of the same breed and had been looking for another. Instead of being relieved, she acted like we had ruined her life by making her get rid of a dog she couldn't handle. Shortly after that, my former brother-in-law took his kids away and refused to bring them back. Not long after, my sister was given an eviction notice, and by January, she was out. When my sister received the eviction notice from the family property in 2023, she moved in with her only remaining friend and immediately resumed breeding pugs. And, just like before, she kept the cutest one for herself. However, this arrangement didn't last long. Her best friend eventually kicked her out, and she moved in with a new boyfriend, who also happened to be her drug dealer. That relationship quickly turned toxic, and before long, her abusive boyfriend threw her out, leaving her stranded in a broken-down recreational vehicle on the side of the road. At that point, she had burned through nearly all of her relationships because of her entitled and self-centered behavior. She had nowhere to go and ended up staying with her boyfriend's sister for 2 days. That ended as well when my sister let her pugs have accidents all over the bedroom floor without cleaning up after them. Unsurprisingly, the woman kicked her out. I had to be the one to go and clean up the mess when I picked up my sister and her belongings. After that, I spent an entire day driving around with all of her stuff loaded into my truck, while she desperately tried to find someone to take her in. Most of the people she called didn't even bother to return her messages. To make matters worse, I was the only one actually taking care of her dogs. She just sat in her car, scrolling on her phone, while I walked them. Then she tried to force me to take her dogs home with me. But I couldn't because our parents, who are also my landlords, had already made it clear that I was not allowed to bring the dogs to our home. When I told her no, she completely lost it. She tried to argue that our parents were allowing me to bring her belongings home in my truck and that her dogs were part of her stuff. I still refused, and she went into a full-blown meltdown. That night, she ended up sleeping in her car, surrounded by piles of junk and 3 pugs. She didn't even have food for them. I had to buy some because she was completely broke. The next day, our mother paid for a motel room so she wouldn't have to sleep in the car again, but she showed zero gratitude for it. Then, just as expected, she went right back to her abusive boyfriend the very next day. I didn't even bother sticking around, I just dumped her stuff in his front yard and left. Eventually, my sister had no choice but to surrender the mother and father pugs to a rescue organization. But, of course, she insisted on keeping the puppy. I had already told her she needed to give up all the dogs because she couldn't properly care for them while being homeless. She admitted she might consider letting go of the parent pugs, but she outright refused to part with the puppy. I explained that trying to raise a puppy while living on the streets wasn't fair to the dog. She ranted about how pets were great for the mental health of homeless people and insisted that she needed him. My sister had been in contact with a pug rescue organization at one point, but eventually stopped responding to them. So I looked them up and gave them a call. They were genuinely concerned for the dog's well-being so much so that they kept calling me back to provide updates and check on the situation. Eventually, they informed me that my sister had surrendered the 2 parent dogs to them. They even paid her $100 for each dog. I don't know if that was standard practice or if my sister somehow pressured them for money since they were purebred pugs and a breeding pair. The rescue didn't clarify. However, they assured me that both dogs were highly adoptable and likely found homes quickly, possibly even together. My sister also had a tabby cat that she could no longer care for, and she begged me to take him in. Not only did I agree to take him, but I also refused to give him back later. He absolutely loves it here, and in a way, this has always been his real home. When I first brought him back, he started purring the second we pulled into the driveway, and I mean aggressively purring. He couldn't even see outside because he was inside his carrier, but he recognized the place by smell. The moment I let him out, he bolted around the yard like he was thinking, "I'm home." Before this, my sister had taken him to live in a terrible environment with her abusive boyfriend. If I had given him back, she would have just dragged him back into that same unstable life. So, I made it official. I got him microchipped and registered in my name to make sure she couldn't take him away. The truth is, my sister is an animal hoarder. She keeps pets but refuses to clean up after them. And if she has the money and the space, she'll just keep getting more. Over 20 years ago, she lived in an old manufactured home with 20 cats, and she let them use the entire house as a litter box. I had to clean up after them so many times because she wouldn't do it herself. And let me tell you, if you've never had to clean up after that many cats, you don't know what real work is. I had to use a shovel to clear out the mess. Those cats were just piling waste on top of more waste. It was like digging through wet clay. At least I clean up after my pets. Recently, my sister showed up, demanding her cat back. I refused and told her to leave the property. She got angry and threatened to report me, but she hasn't followed through. Probably because she knows we're aware of her drug use and doesn't want law enforcement anywhere near her. I could tell the cat wanted nothing to do with her. When she wasn't looking, I saw him dart under the house to hide. Normally, he's friendly with everyone, but this time, he was terrified. After she finally left, he started following me around, meowing non-stop like he was trying to say, "Please don't make me go with her." And honestly, I never would. Story 6. Let me start off with a few things. First, that I did in fact look like an employee. Second, although I am in my early 30s, I am often mistaken for someone just out of high school or college freshman. Third, even though this happened literally an hour before I am posting this, all quotes are to be understood as "to the effect of" and not exact wordings. Also, names have been changed to protect the guilty. My local hardware store is full of helpful hardware folks, which means there is not much of a uniform. But floor associates wear bright red vests and managers wear business casual with a name tag. I was wearing khakis, flats, and a cute red micro plaid button-up top. I was on my way home from a blissfully short day at work, so I figured it would be a good day to get some tools to make some simple repairs and some materials for a remodel that my partner and I have going on in our second-floor bathroom. I was trying to get a couple of items from the top shelf, but only being a touch over 5'4", 1.65 meters tall, I have a little bit of an issue, especially since they are the last two on the shelf. I managed to get the first one batted into my hand, but the second one is pushed back just enough that I can't exactly reach it. Enter Jethro. Jethro walks over, and with a "lemme help you, missy," grabs the box I am trying to reach and hands it to me. Thanks. I keep my praise short because I am not sure if he is just trying to be a good guy and help me, or if he is on the train of thought that a woman does not belong in a hardware store, except to be a cashier or arm candy for her husband. He wastes no time removing any doubt. I can't believe they would make you pull items and not let you have a step stool. Oh, no sir, I don't work here. I start, only to be cut off by Jethro. You have to work here. You're a woman. What else would you be doing in a hardware store? Jethro says. And why doesn't Jeb work here anymore? That old boy was one of the best. Blah blah blah. I honestly toned him out at this point. I roll my eyes, figure I don't have time for this, and start to push my cart away from him. This spurs a bellow from the depth of Jethro's beer belly. Don't you walk away from me? I'm a paying customer. I spin on my heels. Listen here, Billy Bob, Joe Danny Frank. I understand your original confusion, unfortunate fashion choice on my part, but I already told you. I do not work here. Thank you for getting the items for me, but really, I do not work here. I am here because I am remodeling my bathroom. I yell back at him. His tone instantly changed to this sickly sweet, implied, bless your heart, with every line as he said, "Redoing your bathroom. Well, I just happen to be a contractor, and I can help you with all the permits," he says before giving me a long, hard leer, like I was a gorgeous porterhouse steak, cooked to medium rare and ready to be devoured. He said some provocative gross stuff as well. Instant mouth vomit, figuratively of course. But before I can say or spew anything, enter the hero of our story, Ben. A few things about Ben. Ben is an imposing wall of muscle. Literally, was a bricklayer for years before he retired and then agreed to help his friend, the owner of this store. Ben may look like he could rip the arms off of a Sasquatch, but he is a gentle giant. Ben pulls a move straight out of the Karen handbook and clears his throat, getting both Jethro and myself to look over to Ben. Jethro, you know well that Jeb was fired because he shared your misinformed, misguided and misconceived notions on who should and should not be allowed in this store. This is the early 20s, but not the 1820s. I've had enough of your racist and misogynistic nonsense to last me a lifetime. Set your cart down and walk away. You are no longer welcome here," Ben said with barely concealed rage. Jethro started with the "but wellas," and Ben cut him off with a curt and authoritative, "No, you leave now, or the police will come and make you leave." And with his ego massively deflated, Jethro left. I was able to finish my shopping without any further molestation, after Ben apologized a couple of times, and we did have a good laugh about the fact that I did look like an employee.